Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God. Let's edify one another tonight, shall we?
Good evening.
Uh-uh. That's not yours. That's
Um,
O'Shea.
the Saints of Professionalism and Shenanigans.
You are so
Terrible, yeah.
enthusiastic was the word I was looking for.
Oh, the Saints of Professionalism and Shenanigans. Whee!
Okay, let's not overdo it.
Oh,
You might, strain a sarcasm muscle or something there. Hey, looks like Esword joined us.
yes.
Did you download those maps?
I did not get a chance to, but I have the map on a PowerPoint, so that's what we're doing tonight.
I don't know. Is it as good as mine was yesterday or last week?
No, but I can.
Because mine was from directly from Esword.
I figured out how to. Come on now. I figured out how to use the magnifying glass on here, so it'll be good.
All right, Watson.
Let's
Come,
see.
the game is afoot.
The wow.
Well, that lightens up a specific spot, but it doesn't really magnify it. Perhaps a little bit.
I'll figure it
I know you will. Where were we at? Oh,
out.
wait. We finished up at 8, I think. Because they were over by the Fair Havens last night.
Control Plus magnifies my slide. That'll be cool. We are
Well,
getting near the end here. I think if we really wanted to, we could finish up before the holidays. If we
we
really
already
want,
talked about that. We're supposed to be into the text here. 27, 1 through 8, it is where we were, where you're reviewing.
yep, so let me get my,
Hello and welcome, everyone that's here.
go swoop.
Skadoop.
Whoops,
That's
maybe
nice. That's really nice.
it
It's not
is that,
even. It's not even pixelated. That's really nice.
it is that too big or is that nice?
That's nice, especially if you move it to the left a little bit. So that
Alright,
good.
so whoops, we're not in the island of Malta yet. That'll be in a couple weeks. Alright, so Paul begins his voyage to Rome in the previous chapter, and actually in chapter 25, Paul had appealed to Caesar, and now in chapter 27, he begins this voyage, and so it was decided that we should set sail to Italy. So they're going. I don't know what is the issue here. What is the issue? So
It's a
they're,
left click and drag,
they're going
or a
eventually
control minus.
in they're eventually going to end up. Do I not have it on this map?
Don't know.
I don't.
Nope.
Let
Have to
me.
go to the next map. Hi, Craig.
Oh, I have it back there. So they're eventually going to end up.
At the Red Star.
Yeah. Yes, at the Red Star. And that's where that's where the angle is. And with them, they deliver upon some of the other prisoners there, and we get the list of their names. And then the, they landed in Sidon. They set sail from Sidon. Uh, excuse me. When we put to sea, yes. So they come to Sidon, and from there, that's over here. They are over here. I don't. Oh, there's my mouse. There's because Tyre and Sidon, if the map showed it, it would be in this area, right?
You could go back to the first map that you were showing, which would show it a lot better without all the.
Here we go. So it's not sail from here.
You wanna grow that?
Yep. I don't know why my mouse is having trouble here. It wasn't earlier. There's stuff from Sidon over here, and then they go under the shelter of Cyprus, so they go here now, and they are sailing under this island. Here's Cyprus, there. And then, because of the winds, yeah, and then in verse 5 it says, "We have sailed over the sea, which is off of Cilicia and Pamphylia, and we came to Myra." So now they're way over here in Myra. So we went from Sidon under Cyprus
Maureen's
around
here.
to Myra. Hi, Maureen.
Alicia says Maureen's here. So hello, Maureen.
And then, when we had, so they're sailing slowly in verse 7 because the wind is strong. And they,
Hello.
hello, Maureen. And they arrived, with great difficulty here in, they went from Miles to Cindus right here.
Snidus.
Snidus, sorry. Which is not actually here, it's right here where the arrow's pointing.
And we noted that they actually didn't stop at Snidus. They just simply were near it.
Right there. That's right. Off Snidus. Yeah.
Sounds like someone's got a Snidus infection.
Ignoring that. And then they sailed
I wish he just died in the office.
Inside this, the wind did not permit them to keep sailing, so they sailed under the shelter of Crete, which is the island right here.
Hey, we're on TV.
Yay! I always wanted to be on TV. So now they're under the shelter of Crete because of the storm. Now, passing that with
Maureen caught the sinus infection. Reference.
and so, verse 8, passing it with great difficulty, we came to a place called Fair Havens near the city of Lucia. So they apparently go, let's see, it's nice, they go maybe over and down or down and
They go
past
between the Cave Salmonet and Rhodes in order to get under Crete.
caves.
And if you notice, Lycia is on the bottom side of Crete. Salmonet, it would be on the point where Cape Salmonet is.
Where is
Your
caves?
your pointer is right at is like Lycia, and Cape Salmonet is just to the right.
Yes. So they come through here.
Yes.
And that really takes us through
Verse 8.
verse 8 where we are. Anything to add?
Yeah, the one thing that I did not mention last week is that Luke is back with Paul. There, for a time, it appears that Luke was kind of absent, especially after his capture in Jerusalem. Yet, by the time we reach chapter 24, middle of chapter 24, with Felix and Felix joining Festus. Festus. Yeah, well, no, when Felix takes over and he comes into the arena or the comes to the hall with Drusilla, however that one's actually pronounced. He sends for Paul, but it says when Felix came with his wife. So we have here, instead of Felix, when Felix went with his wife, or we're starting to see again the language that of presence,
Right.
of Luke being present. But 27 begins with when it was determined that we should sail. So you see that the physician is back with Paul and traveling. In fact, we had sailed many days, verse 7. Even in back in verse 6, he put us therein. So there's a lot of we's in there. So we know that Luke is there with them.
Good point.
On this trip. So this has ceased to be the historian recording something from sources and is now back onto it being an eyewitness account. All right, so we're going to pick up in chapter 9 or in verse 9, and see how far do we want to read.
That is weird, Angie. Facebook deleted all of her posts back beginning of August.
Did you update your page layout or something?
Yeah, we
or
freaked out.
revert.
I think we freaked out one time because all of our stuff was gone.
Somebody reverted our post or our page layout, and it eliminated all of our all of our posts.
I wonder who that idiot was.
I never said idiot.
Yeah, I did.
Let's read 9 through 20. We're gonna break this up a bit.
That's a good chunk here.
Well, the rest of it would be 9 through 44, and I don't think we want to cover that all night, or at least not all in this section.
Right. No much time had been spent, and sailing was now
Hold on 1
dangerous.
minute. Are you back, Alicia? Well, come along. We'll have the Bible up presently. Acts 27, verse 9. Angie said, "Nope, I couldn't get on earlier at all." Have you been locked in Facebook jail now?
Angie, we're not supposed to go to jail.
Well, if they persecute us for the cause of Christ, we may end up like Paul and Silas in the Philippian jail.
I guess, yeah.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Now, when much time had been spent and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already over, Paul advised them, saying, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives." Verse 11 up.
11, Alicia, not 12.
Nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the owner of the ship than by the things spoken by Paul. And because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to set sail from there also, if by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete, opening toward the southwest and northwest, and in winter there. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing they had obtained their desire, putting out to sea, they sailed close by Crete. But not long after, a tempestuous headwind arose, called Euros.
Cyclodon. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Eurocyclodon.
Euroclydon. Euroclydon. Sorry, my apologies.
Euroclydon. So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her drive. And running under the shelter of an island called Claudia, we secured the skiff with great difficulty. When they had taken it on board, they used, I wonder what they used, cables to undergird the ship, and fearing lest they should run aground on citrus sands, they struck sail and were so driven. And because we were exceedingly tempest tossed, the next day we lightened the ship. On the third day, we threw the ship's tackle overboard with our own hands. Now, now when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no small tempest beat on us, all
Alicia, back up.
all hope that we would be saved was finally given up.
All right. So, a lot to unpack here. Chapter in verse 9, um, they wasted too much time. Angie, of course, says that she was restricted, locked out. She said, "Oh, no, not me." Anyway, verse 9. They wasted too much time. They dilly dallied around in the Fair Havens, around the Fair Havens, and they just wasted way too much time. And because of that, it became dangerous to sail because the fast was already over. Which fast? We're not really told, but it was the one of the um, one of the Jewish fasts. You know that was by which they were telling time. Uh, but Paul admonished him. He said, "Don't do this. Don't go. Don't sail. Wait. The voyage is going to be with hurt and much damage. You're gonna lose a lot, not just the cargo but also lives if you proceed with this course of action." But the centurion, he listened to the master or the helmsman of the ship and the owner of the ship, men who had been sailing for years, more than likely. I mean, they probably weren't novices, but then again, they didn't have the benefit of having divine knowledge like Paul did.
Yeah.
And we also should remember that Paul was a citizen of Tarsus, and Tarsus was no mean city, and it was also near the coast. So Paul would not have been unfamiliar with the principles, at least, of sailing.
Right.
But the centurion didn't listen to him. He listened to people that he counted as more knowledgeable than Paul. Verse 11. Verse 12. Also, what we see is that the harbor was not suitable to winter in. It was not a good harbor. It was okay as a stopping point, but at a certain time of the year, it emptied out because the winds and the tides and just were not conducive to keeping a ship intact during the winter. Winter months for the Sea of for the Mediterranean Sea, and I think this is right around the Aegean Sea, is actually October through April. So we're right now in their winter months. So think of it this way: we are right now during the time that Paul was setting out to go to Rome from the Fair Havens. We are probably just past that time, or just before that. No, just past that time. So that he would have already been setting out because they wouldn't have wanted to winter there. They would have been in the fall, so probably around September, maybe late September, as they're getting ready to leave. Isn't that fascinating? Isn't that something just to kind of put a grin on your face as you contemplate this fact that Paul is sailing at this time of year to Rome? It's kind of cool. So they're going to try to head to Phoenice, or as the NKJV says, Phoenix. Obviously, again, this would have been a city of the Phoenicians. Phoenicians during Solomon's time were great widely revered, if you will, seafaring men and or a seafaring nation. They knew the seas. They were merchants that plied their trade along the Mediterranean and other places. And this, of course, would have been one of their cities named after them. Um, and they would have known good harbors and where to build them and how to build them. But if you look, they're at Paul and them are at Fairhavens. They don't have a far way to go to get to Phoenix. And Paul says, "You don't want to go there. Don't do it." And it's a haven of Crete, which lieth to the southwest and the northwest, which would prevent which would have been protected from the fierce or winter winds and waves. So they think they've got it made when the south wind's blowing softly. Okay, hey, the south wind's it's blowing the south. We're going to make good time. Let's go now. And so they leave. Back in those days, since they didn't have any motors, and Popeye hadn't found the wonderful effects of spinach yet, and his pipe, they couldn't put him in the water and let him and drive him.
Can
So,
you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you.
This is interesting.
Oh,
This is
it's not reading.
no, not in this mic because it's dead. Okay.
Either
Well,
you forgot to turn it on.
it wasn't. The receiver is dead. But if what you told me is correct, all I gotta do is plug it in, and it'll be good.
Yeah,
Right?
you should be able to plug it into you're talking about the little receiver for the laptop?
No, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, you
My
should just simply be able to plug it into power cord and it should light up. I believe you're able to continue using it. Okay. But so they think that they've gotten their purpose. They think they got the wind that they need to take them over to Phoenix. And so they loose from Fair Havens, and as it wasn't long before they're out to sea and at the mercy of the Euroclydon, or a very tempestuous sea, or tempestuous wind. It's similar to there's a dry wind that comes in into Israel and Saudi Arabia. It would be. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is, but it's such a um, it's a very rough wind that brings with it lots of sand and is a very abrasive. And if you are not covered up, you can literally have your skin, sandpapered off. Type of and it's mentioned in the Bible. It's a I'm trying to remember which wind it is, but anyway.
did that switch me over?
I don't know.
Can you can you tell?
I can still hear you.
Well, yes, this is how I'll tell. If I turn it off and I actually.
No. So it's not on.
Okay.
So evidently I didn't remember correctly. Turn it off, turn it back on. Light's red anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's red and blue. So I thought that means it was on while it's charging.
Should be. Is your light blue solid on the computer?
Yeah, solid blue.
And is Mac actually registering the microphone?
Yes, as I'm running through my external mic.
But is it registering it?
What do you mean?
Tap the mic. Is it actually showing it as? Oh, wait a minute. I didn't say you had to swallow it.
Did you get a big wind?
No.
Interesting. It says it's on my mic and it lights up.
That is interesting. Anyhow, so you have the Euroclydon, and then now the ship's caught in this tempest. It's similar to a hurricane, as you can read about in here. This thing's driving it, and it's like a cyclone or a hurricane, and they couldn't bear. So all they couldn't tack, they couldn't go anywhere with those sails except wherever the wind wanted to take her. So they ended up letting her drive, and they run under the certain island named Clauda, or yeah, Clauda.
Good night,
This
Craig.
map has it Cauda. What?
Good night, Craig.
Oh, night, Craig. And yes, now you're changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you're on that mic.
Sounds different.
Yes, it does. And she's like, now if only I can, now only if I can figure out why I can't view you guys on YouTube, she'd be good. That would be a question. Now, the map there says Cauda, but this is Clauda. So the certain island named Clauda, they had much work to come by the boat or to secure the boat, which had basically sounds like the boat had lost some restraints. Their little skiff, their little sounding boat, where they would ships would have these little skiffs, these little boats. You see it in movies like the Pirates of the Caribbean and stuff that would run the longshore or the shore boats that would they would take people ashore in them, or they would use them for sounding, as it's called, where they would have ropes with knots in them, and the knots were set at prescribed lengths, and they would let these ropes down to see how deep the water was, and if the rope reached a certain knot, then it was so many knots deep. And if they were going so fast, that's how they also told how fast they were going, by knots. That's where the nautical term, how fast are we going? Oh, we're going 5 knots, because they would go 5 knots in length in that so much time.
Just a note I was looking at in my Bible. My footnote says the NU text reads Cauda, so I guess that's a manuscript difference there.
Yeah, and that could just simply be that a scribe left out an L.
Right, right.
None of us have ever done that with our spell, because our spell checker wasn't working, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they were having trouble securing that boat for whatever reason. It had either come unsecured, that had loosened from one of its moorings, or whatever. They had used it, but it was really hard for them to take it back up. But when they did get it taken up, they had to use helps and undergirding cabling, so that they wouldn't fall into the quicksands, and so they struck the sail and were so driven. I believe it says in the New King James, it actually names some sort of sands. Hey, Gloria.
The citrus sands.
Which is interesting because it just says quicksands in the KJV. I wonder, and I imagine that's again a manuscript quirk.
That's what says again in my footnote.
So, it just depends upon which manuscripts are being used as to whether it's going to be called what. But they're not wanting to fall into quicksands. They don't want to get the boat stuck and trapped, and so in order to prevent that, they simply they close up all the sails. They eliminate the sails by raising them all up, or dropping them actually. Wait a minute. They lower the sails. Raise the sails. Yeah, because if they raise the sails, that means we think of it as when we think of them sailing, we think of them raising the sails. You see the boats with the sails furled and up at the top, but in reality, the sails are furled at the bottom. And so they raise the sails. They pull the rigging to raise the sails, and then when they run into situations like this where they don't need the sail, then they can release the ropes and let the sails drop and furl on the bottom post of the mast, whichever one they're doing. So they lowered the sails, they struck them, as it's called, and so they would just let the wind drive them. So they're tossed with that tempest, and as is the case, we see this even with Jonah, as they're in the midst of their tempest. What do you do when you fear that the ship is going to capsize? You lighten the load.
Right.
You don't keep going about with a heavy ship, because if you have a heavy ship, you're liable to sink.
Right.
So you have to weigh the options. Are you going to run with a heavy ship and risk taking too much water and sinking to the bottom of the sea? Or are you going to lighten the ship and risk capsizing over to the side and sinking to the bottom of the sea? Well, the one gives you more options of escape than the other, and that is, if you lighten the load, at least you'll have time to get out of the way should the ship capsize. Plus, there's also the idea of the survivability of having pockets of air, etc. But go ahead.
Capsizing means going over
Yeah,
instead of going down.
right.
Okay.
Laying on its side or even flipping completely over, completely upside down. So they're tossed. They don't, they're scared of sinking, so they lighten the ship, and that doesn't help them. So the third day they go ahead and even cast out the tackling. Well, we ain't gonna use this. We do,
We're not
this
gonna
is
fish much.
well, this, and tackling refers to more than just simply fishing gear. Tackling also is used as in block and tackle for sailing, for raising and lowering sails.
Okay.
So when you see tackling, that's kind of what you're looking at, is all of that. Anything that's loose that has to do with sailing, um, and anything that's heavy, they're looking to survive. And anything that might um, cause damage to the ship, and anything that is too heavy, well, it's got to go.
Right.
So they throw that out, and yet, even now, remember again, Euroclydon is like a hurricane. What do hurricanes have? Rough winds, lots of
Right.
them. And this one was 3 days worth of wind. They didn't find the eye of the storm. For 3 days, they had seen neither sun nor stars in many days, not just 3 days, but in many days.
Right.
So they tossed all the cargo. Then the third day, after they tossed the cargo, or perhaps it was just the third day of the Euroclydon, they lightened the ship by the removing the tackling, and then they were still being driven. Um, and they don't know where they're at.
Yeah,
How can
I
I say?
mean,
How can I say that with confidence?
well, they can't see the stars.
What do the stars have to do with anything? Don't they have Google?
Uh, no,
What about their GPS?
no, the stars were uh, were the indicators, and we can further show this up in the book of Genesis. Right,
Genesis chapter 1, you saying?
right. Genesis 1, signs, seasons, days, years. Is that
Well,
what you?
signs, I mean, signs could be iffy for yes, but mainly the days and seasons and or seasons and days and years, that's for telling time. But but yes, I mean, you are correct in that the sailors and of course um, even people on land had been piloting by the stars. And we can know that as well for the fact that what about the wise men when they came to
Right.
look for
Yeah.
Jesus? We seen his star in the east
Right.
and had come to
Yeah.
worship him. They piloted via a star. They had OnStar navigation.
Grown. Oh. Oh wait, I can't even mumble under my breath now. You can hear it all with this.
That's right. So, uh, so they have run for many days with no way to navigate. They do not know where they're at. Back in Acts chapter 27, verse 20,
20.
Alicia. And so, what do they have left? They have no hope whatsoever. All hope that we would be saved was finally given up. But let's read 21 through. Uh, 21 through 26. That'll be enough to finish this out for the 10 minutes, don't you think?
Okay. Yep, I was gonna say, well, we could do 38, but I don't think, well, there's a lot of verses, but not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, there is. There's a bit, but let's go ahead and
Okay.
read 21 through 20, 21 through 26.
Alright. But after long abstinence from food, then Paul stood in the midst of them and said, Men and brethren, you should have listened to me, and not have sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. And now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve, saying, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. And indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you. Therefore, take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. However, we must run aground on a certain island.
Okay, and O'Shea says, didn't, he's paraphrasing, but didn't Jesus tell the Pharisees something along the lines of, "You dorks, don't you use the sun and stars to tell when good sailing time is, but you
Oh,
can't see the
yes.
signs of me?" Yeah, he said something similar to that, and that goes back to the old sailor adage, red in the morning, sailors take warning, red at twilight, sailors delight.
Good point.
Um,
Although I don't think I've ever read of the Savior using the word dork, but
he was
that,
paraphrasing.
that may be another translation out there with the NIV.
Okay, so back on 21, Alicia.
Back on track.
After long abstinent from food. So Paul's been fasting all this time. He stands up in the that's a manuscript quirk.
Hmm. That's good.
After a long abstinence, so Paul's been fasting for quite a while, and he stands up in the midst of them and he says, "Man, you should have listened to me. I hate to be and I told you so, but I told you so." That's kind of what he says. And not sailed from Crete and incurred this disaster and loss. You should have listened to me. But he says, all's not bad. He says, I exhort you to be of good cheer, verse 22. So Paul, who had, while at Crete, while at the Fair Havens, told them that he was fearful of them there being such a loss of life as well as the cargo, or a cargo and the loss of life. He is now telling them, cheer up, because there won't be any loss of life among you. Only the ship. You're only going to lose the ship. Now, of course, the owner of the ship is going to be rather
On
distraught at
track.
this
Yeah.
news. But then again, at this point in time, after this many days in this tempest, they're probably thankful that they're not losing their life.
Yeah.
But then Paul gets really weird. I mean, you think about it. If you're the one of the sailors right there, this dude here who's kind of rather emaciated, perhaps a bit, or is kind of thin anyway, because he's been fasting for many days. Um, Stands up. You should have listened to me. There stood by me an angel of the God whom I belong and whom I serve, and he says to me, "Fear not, Paul. You must be brought before Caesar. Lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee."
Verse 24.
Yeah. Now, as a sailor listening to that,
Mm-hmm.
that I would be thinking, dude, you need to eat something.
I know, but
What you been smoking? You need to be passing that around. We're all kind of scared for our lives here. But at that day and time, they were very, very superstitious as well. Remember the Euroclydon, and the fact that a lot of these sailors uh, would have been adherents, disciples of the idolatrous worship, and more than likely of the god Poseidon, the Roman and Greek god. What was the Greek one? Was that Was that Poseidon, O'Shea? Um, it was Poseidon for one, and I can't remember now the other one. Anyway, the god of the sea. Um, huh?
is that Zeus?
No, it wasn't Zeus. Zeus was the father or the king of the gods. He was commanded from Mount Olympus. It was Poseidon, perhaps Triton, but um, anyway, be that as it may, many of them would have been adherents to Poseidon. Some of them, and I think that kind of got its start in Phoenicia, but anyhow, regardless. And so this would have been part of his fury. This would have been something that they would have been saying, okay, this is a battle between him and and the darker side, or they would be fearful of incurring his wrath. Perhaps they, and thinking that someone hadn't offered up their offerings to Poseidon.
Right.
And then this man stands up and says, "The an angel of the God of whom I am and who I serve, stood beside me." And um, okay, to a superstitious folk who believe in idolatry, that would be cause for joy yet alarm. They would be like Jonah. The sailors in Jonah's day. What happened as Jonah is fleeing from God? Going, what's up with that, Jonah?
Well, didn't they question where he was from, and I think they asked him what god he worshipped, or at least
Jonah chapter 1, beginning in verse 4. Who was there was Poseidon, and who was his alter ego?
Neptune.
Neptune. Thank you.
Poseidon's Greek, Neptune's Roman.
Roman. Jonah chapter 1, beginning in verse 4.
Old Testament.
Yeah, not John, Jonah. Jonah, my dear.
Near the end there.
I have a student on my bus, a little girl whose name is Noah. I read tonight about one of the daughters of Zelophehad whose name was Noah. I had forgotten that Noah was also a female name until tonight. Jonah 1, verse 4. I think she just got ousted out of tech.
Do I need to pull the sword?
No, O'Shea just ousted her.
Because I got it.
Wow, we have a full house in here.
Well, yeah,
Well,
we have
everything
to
we
clean the
shared.
office in 2 weeks.
I know that too. We have Alicia, we have Alicia, we have Levi, CJ, Esword, Esword. Full
Yep.
house. A lot of stuff going on. Okay, so what am I looking for?
I should see.
Jonah
1:4.
chapter 1 verse 4, please.
You may take 1 zinc, 1 C, and 1 D.
John or Jonah?
Jonah.
Jonah chapter 1 and verse 4.
Okay.
Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Rebecca, Zephaniah.
You're off.
Yeah.
What?
Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk.
Why do you think I just turned them out? All right. What verse? Where?
4.
4.
1-4.
Yes. Notice this. The Lord sent out a great wind. How about a Euroclydon? Anyway, on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up. Then the mariners were afraid. Verse 5. Let's keep reading, Oshea.
Come on, let's hear. Oh, wait.
And every man cried out to his God, and threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten the load. But Jonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship and had laid down and was fast asleep. So the captain came to him and said, "What do you mean, sleeper? Rise, call on your God. Perhaps your God will consider us that we may not perish." So here he's in almost the same situation. So then they begin to cast lots, trying to figure out who it is, and then all the lots point to Jonah, and they said, "Who are you? What country are you? What's your occupation? What are your people?" And he says, "I'm a Hebrew. I fear the Lord God of heaven, which hath made the land and the sea and the dry land." And in verse 10, that was 9 and 10. Verse 10, the men were exceeding afraid. "What have you done? Why have you done this?" For the man knew that he had fled from the presence of the Lord because he had told them. So they, crazy enough, they knew of the God of the Hebrews. Even though they were idolatrous people, they knew of the God of the Hebrews. And they saw the evidence there, and they were scared. And yet, these people here were superstitious, and they heard Paul saying, "An angel of the God that I serve, of God whose I am and whom I serve," back in Acts 27, verse 23, stood by me and last night or this night and said, "Fear not, I've given you the life of everyone on this ship."
No.
Now, there weren't nobody else saying that. And we can tell that for one reason and from one verse. Know which verse it is? You don't know what verse it is? Huh?
No.
Verse 20.
Oh, yeah. Everybody
All hope that we would be saved was finally given up. There wasn't another person in there that had received a revelation from their God and that they were going to be saved. They had all given up. And Paul stands up and says, "My God says y'all are going to be saved. Because I got to go to Caesar. I got to go stand before Caesar." And so he tells them in verse 25, "Therefore, be of good cheer. Take joy. For I believe God." And indeed, God has granted you, not that, I believe God, that it will be just as it was told me. And he says, "However, we must run aground on a certain island. So God has told him that he has been granted all the lives. What does that mean to Paul?
It's gonna happen.
Yes, but it also means something else, not to Paul, but about Paul.
Yeah. What we see is faith in God on display here.
Mm-hmm.
I believe God. You know, there's a deep trust that Paul has that we all need to strive to see in ourselves so that we can say, look, I believe God. He said this, I believe him.
What's happening in verse 21?
Fasting,
What is coupled with fasting?
prayer,
In almost every other case in the New Testament, prayer is coupled with fasting. So, what do you think Paul's been doing?
probably praying.
Right.
So this revelation probably didn't come out of nowhere. He was probably asking for it.
And then you notice that what is the specific language from the messenger of God that is standing beside Paul in verse 24?
Do not be afraid, Paul.
No, let's look a little bit further down. Indeed, God has granted you all those who sail with you.
That implies Paul's been asking.
Right. And you ask through,
Jesus.
you ask through
Oh, the prayer, yeah.
prayer.
You asked the prayer. Yes.
Yes, you ask through Jesus, but he's been praying for their lives
Yeah.
while he's been fasting.
That's a
Never
good.
caught that before, did we?
No, I haven't.
So
Oh,
Paul's been begging the Lord for the lives of those who have been sailing with him throughout this entire storm. And God answers his prayer in a spectacular way. He says, I will give them, I have given them to you.
right.
But you have to go to this one island first. So you're going to lose the ship, but you'll save every person on board. So we're going to leave Paul driving toward this one certain island with God's promise of every single life. In other words, Paul has just single handedly restored hope to the entire ship.
That's right.
Hope to the hopeless. Isn't that what God's all about?
That's right.
Hope to the hopeless. So we'll pick up there, verse 27 next week.
Yeah, my gears are turning for the review. I think I'm gonna tie some things in big picture next week. But thank you all for being here, and remember here at CEM we want to do 3 things. We want to glorify God, edify the saints, and answer any spiritual questions you may have. And if you want to find out how to study the Bible, if you want to learn more how to study, why we should study, join me tomorrow night as we dive into how to study the Bible. Starts at 9. We're gonna get started very quickly after the timer. Yeah. That is Nick's class, by the way. Oh dear. No, this isn't. Oh dear. Okay. Anyways. Well, yeah, we are going to be. It won't be a full hour. It'll probably be a 45-minute study because I have something to do at 10 o'clock. So, join me for about 45 minutes for a study evening edification class next tomorrow night. Thank you all. Good night. I'm done.
Shenanigans, right?
I know. Shenanigans.
Oh, we love you, CJ. And we truly do miss you over here. It was an absolute fun.
Has it all? It's been a week since I left there already.
Yeah, we're almost 2 weeks now. Can you believe that?
Wow. You know what that means, right? It'll be October again in a blink of an eye.
No, at least it'll be November. Anyway, that way, we hope you do actually find some edification through our time together, through every time that we get together, because, you guys encourage us just by being here. We love each and every one of you, and thank you for being here and spending time with us. And if we can edify you, encourage you, then we have done our job. That way, whether we wake to serve God tomorrow here on this earth or we wake to serve Him tomorrow up there, we are going to wake one way or the other. You know where we'll be, because we'll see you then. God bless.